Our society is damaged and corrupted. Without society, we are only subject to the despotism of tyrants and the evils of men's souls. To correct this, we must understand the purpose and intent of both society and its government. Our wants are what is asked of our society to supply. From these wants become each individual's path of purpose. Of these wants are our physical wants of reproduction, security, our logical wants of values, and our emotional wants of trust, respect, and admiration. Our physical want of reproduction is the most primal. If either people are told that they should not have children or cannot do so, they are left to the outcasts of society, creating havoc and mayhem through the lack of investment in the future prosperity beyond their own lives. We ask of our survival that we have more than mere shelter, health, and food, but that we have the ability to chase prosperity and improve our lives beyond that of our ancestors. We want society that is founded not on its peaceful nature, but the peace it brings to the world. The logical wants of any society is to establish and create values that help us in our collective purpose. Of these values, our natural rights and the privileges that they entail are non-negotiable values of not only Western society, but all societies. In contrast, all other values like equality, equity, fraternity, and wealth must be placed into the hierarchies below these natural rights. Western societies' emotional wants are aimed at peace and excellence both internally and externally. Of the higher emotional values of society are trust and respect. To have a society that is not dominated by its government, there must be an underlying trust of the actions of other members of society and a respect for those people and their moral character to uphold not only their values but uphold the natural rights of others. Of these moral members of society, not all are created equal, and the admiration of these exceptional individuals should be encouraged by the society to promote more excellence from other members of the society. To achieve these wants, we must first uphold our natural rights from all those who wish to usurp them unduly. For the usurpation of these rights only leads to an evil, brutish, and violent world, where the greater purposes cannot be achieved because of the pursuit of power. Society and its spoils are a blessing given to moral and good people. Our responsibility to not only our own purpose, but the preservation of others to pursue their purpose is paramount to the spoils being achievable. The abdication of this responsibility of preservation is the direct corruption of society, as we no longer share the same soul. Admirable people are fundamentally opposed to this corruption, whether that takes the form of a stranger or their own family. Of the people of most admiration within society are the men of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These paragons not only pursue their own purpose, but also allow and facilitate others' purpose. They create the world they wish to live in, rather than allowing the world to dictate all their wants. Though we can all be angels, we are all subject to corruption. The government exists to quell this corruption, this evil, to ensure that society has purpose. Wickedness is a natural injustice born of the imperfect world that is not only defined by our soul, but that of the soul of society. Because of the objective and imperfect nature of our soul, these evils will exist without external forces. Governments do not share this soul. They are a tool, a creation of society to control our injustice, and its use should be relative to the values of society. Without either morality or government, wickedness and injustice stifles all individual purpose. Government as a tool is afforded power from the people it governs to make changes in our world. For until we are truly moral people, government will be necessary for us to achieve our given purpose. The power afforded to government is that of evil. It is allowed to do evil acts without consequence in pursuit of this world of greater purpose. This is a devastating power that can be both used for good and for the advancement of evil. The evils that government attempts to quell within the soul follow those of our natural rights. Murder, imprisonment, indoctrination, theft, censorship, isolation, and corruption are the evils perpetrated against our natural rights that the government has the responsibility to change and to make society a better place. These are perversions of our natural rights, and all other crimes fall within the purview of these primordial crimes with a lesser severity than the true crime. For example, assault and battery are less severe forms of murder because they do not fully restrict life but threaten its existence. The powers of the government directly mirror the evils of the soul. As to fight evil, it must be able to use that same evil. To fight murder and corruption of society, government uses capital punishment. To fight all lesser crimes, the government uses imprisonment, confiscation, censorship, and exile. Of the more modern editions is fighting the evil of ignorance using education. Then there is the idea of the influence of purpose and what is deemed good or bad for society, and there is an inherent value for both government and society to define these. In this influence, the government can decide the prosperous and the impoverished by the use of these powers. The use of these powers and evils should be under strong control of the society, as the mere use of these tends to corrupt the very structures in place to protect it. The evil becomes an inherent part of its user, making their use inherently corrupting. Once corrupted, the government uses the powers for their own advancement rather than the advancement of society altogether. This begins when the strong control from the society becomes weakened through apathy, education, or removal. When not being checked by the power of its society, there is no incentive to not use their powers for their own ends, other than their own individual morality. And because of the corrupting nature of evil, we can never assume that our leaders in any system of government are above being corrupted. For this, we establish contracts with our governments about our appropriate action in society and their listed restrictions on their powers to enforce those actions. In this way, we can know if our government is acting tyrannical if they are in breach of contract, either in literal incorporation or the original intent of that contract. The question arises, where does this corruption begin if it is ultimately good for society to have admirable people? It begins with the evils within our very souls, with our willingness to pursue purpose without regard to the rights of others. Those who subvert the values of the admirable man become the perpetrators of this corruption. These devils should not be underestimated, as they are productive in their ends. They use their slyness to twist values. They have a complete belief in themselves to achieve their goals. They see no issue in using their full arsenal to achieve their goals, and all in pursuit of some lesser purpose like power. And once in possession of this power, they not only use the crimes afforded to them through their lack of shared values, but they also use the power afforded to government as a conduit for their personal ends. The use of their personal crimes makes it necessary for the government to use its power to quell these crimes. But when they are also in the seat of power, it is advantageous to not sufficiently reduce crime to instill fear in others and increase the power of the government. This relationship is necessary to corrupt the population with the use of government. And this corruption either makes people succumb to their evil or to be afraid to stand up to the evils of the world. This good citizen is the opposite of an admirable member of society, as devils have corrupted their virtues for safety, by and from the government. These good citizens not only allow tyranny, but uphold it for a false sense of security. These corrupted values of society make a people that are ignorant, docile, cowardly, and lack any meaningful self-control. They are sheep led to their own slaughter by a wolf in sheep's clothing. These people are ignorant by design, for if they knew where their actions led, no sane person would follow the course of action. They are therefore docile, as to not threaten the power of their immoral leaders. This in turn allows the citizen to be inactive in their society. Through either cowardice or apathy, they fold the immoralities abundant within their society. Finally, through a lack of self-control of their baser urges, the good citizen allows its government to use evils and immoralities it was never intended to use. The admirable members of society then avoid being instrument to and product of their government. For this reason, they avoid the uses of evils and powers afforded to the government, and oftentimes leadership roles altogether until a necessary time of struggle or turmoil. Until that point, government and all other structures with power are inhabited by people who will use the affordances of government for personal gain at the expense of all others in society. As of this point, the discussion has been on the nature of society and government and their relationship to each other. Now, I intend to direct this to the current state of affairs and position that our society and our government are in relation to where they were intended to be. Within Western society, all people are corrupted, not just the political left or right. Our very values are eroded and decayed to the point that the pillars that hold our society in place not only can no longer hold itself up, but actively pull the society in conflict with itself. We can no longer effectively reproduce because men and women are at odds with the role they play within their relationships. Men have never grown from boys wanting merely a mother to take care of them and their basic needs met, and women have never grown to control their urges and powers afforded to them over the basic needs of men, nor do they develop skills to maintain a relationship based on values rather than materials. These truths together make it not only an implausibility for children, but almost an impossibility. Then, in the pursuit of power and wealth, survival has become a commodity wielded by the government. Inflation, rising housing prices, and many other physical wants are quickly becoming out of reach for the majority of people. Of our emotional wants, we no longer have peace at home because of the evils perpetrated by the evil members of society, and we do not have peace with our neighbors because of the abuses of power of government upon them to impose control over others. Of our logical wants, values have been stagnant since the invention of communism and the outset of World War II. And those who attempt to establish values that do not trample on our shared values are threatened, exiled, and killed when exposing the evils abused by the government or the corruption of their society. The killers of the admirable men are not important because they serve the same end of removing any that wish to upend the corruption of society by the abuse of governmental power. For this reason, admirable men are a dying breed because of the corruption of society with fear and indoctrination to become the good citizen. From an American perspective, our contract has been voided, and we have been too distracted to realize that our government is now a tyranny, masquerading as a republic. Of all values listed in the Constitution, the government has ignored them and actively destroys the wisdom that they were founded on. To fix this corruption, we must become the admirable members of society that our society is based on, rather than the weak and ineffectual people that the government wishes us to be. To uphold our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of our purpose, and realign our society to make admirable people, we must reject the lesser values imposed by the government and created by the evil members of society. Asking the government to fix these problems is like asking an arsonist to be a firefighter. So we must look for a societal solution. And of these is becoming people of principle and purpose again, rather than the children sucking at the teat of government to solve all of our problems. To do this, we must either be loud or go to war with the powers afforded to the government. To reform our government to stop its corruption, we must restore the intent of our contract with it. For Americans, this is the Constitution. And in doing so, those who wish to abuse the powers afforded to them will call it treasonous, while the docile and fearful citizen will call this course of action dangerous. Not if, but when the calls for reform are refused, we must be ready to abolish the government, to institute a new one to reflect the contract that it has voided, either through mere disobedience or outright war with the evils that are wielded to corrupt society. I call everyone to bear the cost of freedom. Give me liberty or give me death. If you like the video, please support us in some way and go be the men and women you are intended to be.